Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hey, Alvaro, how you doing?
Hello. I always make fun of you because you're often controlling the background program here, and like there's a little countdown thing or something, and I don't see it. I actually saw the little countdown thing this time.
You saw the 3, 2, 1?
Yeah, 3, 2, 1 in yellow, and that's never happened before. I don't know if the software's like gotten better or something, but
it's not that you just paid attention for the first time ever?
No, I don't think so, because I'm often, paying attention, I'm trying to avoid looking at your visage there.
It's a lot to absorb. Yeah.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. Those are the kinds of things that I find exciting. This is how dull my life has become.
Hey, I don't know if you noticed, Al, but between recordings, we recorded earlier today. Now we're recording again.
You have no hat on.
I got my hair cut.
Oh, so now you're like showing off the hair because
check me out.
You got your hair cut. Yeah,
I'm feeling very clean. I love a haircut because I feel like so neat and tidy afterwards. It's like I literally feel like I'm not carrying as much weight.
You feel neat and tidy, but
yes,
the reality is quite
very different.
Yes. Yeah, I actually cut my hair today too, but you wouldn't know that because my hair's about a quarter inch long.
It looks pretty much the same all
the time. Yeah, I know. But
no, I was woofing. I was like, Kristen usually cuts my hair, and we were going to cut it right before I went to India, but she was like kind of under the weather and just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
So she cut it today, and I was like, oh man, I feel so much better. So much better.
Do you feel you have less power when you cut your hair?
No, I don't have any of that Samson stuff. No.
Samsonite, yeah.
Yeah, I could use some Samsonite, yeah. But can I tell you, I'm still upset about this Eurasian goshawk that I saw in India.
Oh,
I'm so upset.
You were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I just went and checked again. Nothing doing. The guy's, whoever the reviewer is,
I don't even know how to check for that. Like, that's how clued
Well, I just checked the map, and there's like no pin,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm starting to take it a little personally, but, whatever. Living well is the best revenge,
Right. Urban goshawks. I don't want to get into that whole deal.
So, my sleep is all messed up from getting back from India.
Right.
And it's like 10 and a half hours ahead over there compared to here. And I keep waking up at like 3 a.m. and going to bed at like 7 or 8 at night or something. Like I'm all jacked up. My sleep's all jacked.
Huh.
And the other night, I'm trying to fall asleep, and I'm so tired that I like kind of stayed asleep. But I'm hearing singing, and I realized that Kristen, who had recently bought a karaoke machine here at the house for our stepdaughter for her birthday, was singing karaoke. And she kept doing that song Major Tom, not the one by David Bowie, the other one.
There's another one?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the other song. Peter Schilling? Is that it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I want to say it was like 6 times in a row. She was really trying to get it just right. And man, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But that's what I was hearing now. So I got that song all day in my head now. It's just like, it's going, it's like pinned to the brain.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny. I don't get. I sleep like the longer the flight is, the more I sleep on the flight, and I tend to get home and I'm pretty much always tired at about sleep time. And I might wake up one night, middle of the night, and then fall asleep again. And then I'm back on track. Like,
wow.
my body just reacts okay to,
Time change.
to travel like that. Time travel.
Yeah, that is not the case for me.
Yeah.
Takes me usually half a week to a week to kind of like fully reintegrate.
I fall asleep like anywhere, all the time, any spot, no problem. I'm one of those sleep anywhere kind of people.
That's a skill.
Kat's made the argument that I can do that because I have nothing going on in my head. Like absolutely nothing. It's like empty. Like there's no thought. There's
Super
nothing
zen.
that can race around my head and keep me awake because there's nothing going on. And
Are
I'm
you
like,
literally is it like meditation? Are you like owming? Are you like like finding an inner peace, or you just
no, I just fall asleep. And then I get insulted by this concept that there's nothing going on in my head. But then I assess, and surely, like truly, there is nothing going on in my head. I just like fall asleep. Like there's nothing. Like I just, okay, shut down, like no thoughts, no nothing. It's like, it's weird. I used to have things that would keep me up. Like back in the field guides days, sort of, I used to worry more. Maybe I just don't worry anymore.
You've evolved.
I've evolved. Or maybe it's you can, as a tour leader, I don't know, it'd be an interesting thing to like ask other tour leaders about this. When you are working for yourself, you feel like you have pretty much control over things. When you're working for others, you feel like you don't have control of what's going on. So to some extent, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like the control part is true, but I don't feel like that helps me sleep any better. In fact, maybe the opposite.
Right.
But I'm not sure.
You heard about like people, like there are cases that, I mean, it just sort of I saw a news story about somebody who was just deathly afraid of flying, like just could not fly. And it was like a really bad thing. So they actually learned how to fly a plane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they actually got in a plane, went, and took the courses, learn how it all works, and they can fly perfectly well because now they understand about the control aspect
dynamics
of it,
behind it all.
Dynamic.
It's like totally reminds me of B.A. Baracus from the A-Team, Mr. T. It's like, remember they always had to like slip him a Mickey in order to like, get him to fly.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? I may have never seen an episode of the A-Team.
Oh, Alvaro.
I just saw the guys.
Horror. The horror.
There was a time, there was a period of time where we had no TV. Like we were just, crunchy granola, kind of no TV people.
Yeah. I think I've told you before, one of my favorite moments in television history was an episode of the A-Team where Isaac Hayes and Rick James were guesting on the A-Team with George Peppard and Dirk Benedict and Dwight Schultz. That's a lot of talent right there. It was pretty impressive, I gotta say.
I only know 2 out of those 5 names. One
of the best theme songs of all time.
I know right after that Greatest American Hero, you love that one.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah, that was real good.
Song.
Very good.
Speaking of theme songs, we don't have a theme song, do we?
Well, we kind of do. We got like the little part at the beginning. It's very short. It's very short.
I know.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody
you thinking of composing one?
No, but yes. I mean, but I wonder if anybody just hears that tune and just goes like Life List, like as it like made this connection,
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of thing. Would be interesting. The do you want to do a little recap of what you've been up to, or do you want to dive right into our topic? What do because I got to
Well,
tell everybody that we had kind of a weird start because Molly was
yes.
here, right? So it was all three of us, but Molly was in Colombia, and there'd been this thunderstorm. Power was out, just come back on. Internet was out. She was trying to get in touch with us through the phone. She kind of connected. It looked all okay, but then it wasn't working. So we had to go, just me and George, and it felt a little weird because we were all here. And
we had the round table. We were all ready
right.
to rock. Now
and
our
then
third
suddenly we're like,
musketeer
exactly. And we had
Yeah.
the topics all set up, and we, kind of things that would really work well for three of us to like riff on. And now we're like, maybe we should reset this a little bit so that some of those things we can talk about.
No.
as
I
a
think,
group, but
yeah,
maybe not.
I think I've got ideas. Molly and I, we're going to get together next week and talk about some stuff, and we'll get an update on what she's been up to. Because when you said we had a weird start, I thought you meant to this year, which is true because we had recorded a couple episodes, and then we've been all of us have been away. So it's been sort of it feels like a little bit of a false start, but now I feel like we're hitting our groove. We got a bunch of stuff coming. You got a solo episode coming. I got a solo episode coming. I got an episode where I'm doing some stuff kind of fresh from the field, that I'm going to try out and see what people think. So I'll be interested for feedback. The other thing I wanted to mention before we got too deep out is I wanted to remind folks of our Life List newsletter. You should check it out. Go to either lifelistpodcast.com and scroll down to where you'll see a sample newsletter, and you can subscribe. Cool articles, news that we think is interesting. You'll find fun and some other stuff as well. And you can find it also on the Hillstar Nature website under the media tab. There's a place there for you to subscribe. So people should definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a bunch of new kind of takes on things we're doing, and we're looking forward to feedback as we move along.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things that's happening right now with this podcast, I got to say, it's like I'm leaving, Molly's coming back to the country. There's kind of this whole yet there's these juicy topics that we would love to talk about.
Yeah,
Flaco.
Oof.
That reaching 10,000 birds and all that, the hot tea that happened in that
I should say
shenanigans.
Heavens.
And I'm wondering if, I just want to let people know we're well aware of these things that are going on.
Oh, yes.
And I do wonder if you want to talk anything about those right now, or we leave it for when all three of us are. Or do you want to just give a little inkling of thoughts?
I want to know what is on the mind of Alvaro Jaramillo. What is leapt to the top of your mind over these past few days of those that you mentioned? Let's address that first and foremost.
I was thinking about Flaco. One thing is inevitable what was going to happen. Flaco he passed away. He had to pass away at some point. But and I guess he hit a window, hit a building or something like that, and then he was found on, and I guess they might be doing some level of post-mortem analysis. But the other thing that's happened is the camps, the free Flaco versus the, this is crazy talk people have maintained in their camps, and each one of them has used this event to sort of show that their point of view was the right one. It's like it's either like he lived a great 1 year, as a wild bird, or it was like, this is a disaster. Poor guy should have never been out there, and he hit a window. And
right.
I'm just
for those that may have forgotten, right? Somebody broke the cage, messed up his cage so that he was able to escape, and then basically they ended up deciding that recapturing him was going to be more stressful or potentially harmful than just letting him, live out his life and seeking rats and squirrels on the streets of New York. And I guess what I find odd is that, I mean, maybe it's not so surprising, but like all of a sudden he hit a window. It's like, it's been a whole year, it all unfolded.
Mhm.
His quote unquote escape all unfolded while Molly and I were doing the Life List podcast tour in Colombia exactly a year ago. He's
Mhm.
been successfully navigating the streets this whole time. All of a sudden a window pops up. I don't know. Weird.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that, the other topic that we got to get into more details of this because there's a lot of elements, but the basic situations, Peter Kastner, guy's been around forever, was on our Antarctica trip, one of the rock jumper guides now, previously did a lot of birding in his work life as a diplomat, working all different parts of the world, full lifetime of looking for birds, wanting to achieve the the classic number that we all sort of say, is anybody ever going to get their 10,000 birds?
Yeah, 10,000.
So 10,000 birds. So he's been building up the whole thing for years.
Yeah, and we've been watching it. It's all been unfolding in front of us. This,
right.
Low these many years. Yeah.
And then basically the day before he's gonna announce, or that he actually had to shift all of his tours and stuff because he saw this guy, Jason. Oh man, I've forgotten his last name. Jason.
I don't.
Anyway, this dude comes in.
We'll call him Dude.
Yeah. Dude just comes in out of nowhere and says, "I did it, 10,000 birds." Boom, the day before, and then people were like, "Is this a joke?" Like,
yeah, I thought it was a joke at first. I totally thought it was like a trolling joke at first. I was like, no one's ever heard of this person. Joke. Yeah. It was, to say the least, it was odd.
It was odd. And then everybody out in the sort of the Facebook, Twitter lands and stuff were like, who is this guy and where's his list? He's not on eBird. But then I guess they get the fact that he's on iGoTerra, and he's seen his 10,000 birds includes multiple species that nobody's seen for decades, right. Including birds that, as far as I know, no human being has ever seen or at least have any proof of seeing.
Right.
And
still do not, for the record.
Still do
not. As far as anyone knows.
So it was not a list that you could sort of say was
super clean and neat and tidy. Like, yeah.
Right. And as moment that all this stuff started kind of coming out, he sort of the day after, he goes, you know what, Peter, you got it. You got the record. You did it. Yeah, my bad. And he kind of like walked it back. But the insanity of it all is like, benefit of the doubt. Let's say he saw a ton of birds, this guy. Why? How? For what purpose would you ever think in a community that values the fact that birding is all about, honesty and transparency and getting photos of the rarities and going through this process where you sort of build up credibility? So Peter has built up this credibility over the years.
Yeah.
That, that is just there. It's sitting there because you can see years of history.
And
why would so many people come
tied to that history? There's so many people tied to that history. Yes. And lodges, that's really, I think that's the thing that was surprising and sort of jarring about the claim of this other person was that there's no way to reach the number of 10,000. Like I had a friend asking me about this whole situation, saying like, well, we know some other people that have seen a lot of birds, and some people could just kind of come out of the woodworks you wouldn't know. And I'm like, that's not really true.
No,
Like
yeah.
it's one thing to say you've seen 5,000, 6,000 birds. Once you're starting to get to the 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, much less 10,000, like there are some birds that you can only see with the help of certain guides. And there are
Mhm.
some places that in order to see certain birds, you would have had to have met certain people. Or at the very least, if you didn't meet them, they would have to have known that you had visited these sites because either they're private
Mhm.
or they're, there's only so many. So there are dozens of species for which there are only a very, very, very limited number of ways, if not one way to see them.
Right.
And so to get all those birds for which there's only one or two ways to see them, you have to meet and work with a lot of people. And Peter has done a great job of documenting that over time. He talks on along in his journey. He shows the people that he have helped him. And and as you say, he tries to get photos or sound recordings of virtually everything. So his record really can't be impugned because it's backed up either by photos or by sound recordings or by observers that have those or were with him, or more often, all of those things working in concert at once.
Right.
Whereas this other person does not have virtually any of that.
Right.
And also claimed a whole bunch of birds that are basically island endemics that no one has ever seen because you can't get to those islands. They're off limits. Or there are birds that actually have basically, are myths and have never been seen by anyone else alive for decades.
Right.
So, and the other thing that was suspicious too is it's sort of like if you see somebody doing a big year and as they're closing out the big year, let's say they're doing a big year in North America, right? In the ABA area.
Stealth big year.
Yeah. Well, let's say they're doing a public big year, right? And it's a public ABA big year. And all of a sudden they get 10 species on their last day. Like that's pretty much impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time you reach your last day, if you're lucky, you'll get one or two birds. And that would take a good amount of luck to get two. The odds are, you might be able to plan it such that you get one, but getting two or more would be unheard of.
Right.
And
the math is that you asymptote. You basically get, no matter, you got to do a ton of effort to get that one more when you get to that level, right?
And this is a person that claimed like in the last 3 months to have gotten hundreds of new birds. And that was partly how they reached this. So nothing is impossible. And, I shouldn't say nothing, but like anything almost is possible. And who knows? I cannot prove that this number
happen.
I cannot prove that this didn't happen, but I would say that
and he walked it back at least to sort of not go for the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it is distressing with birding. Typically there's not a lot to gain by lying. And we're not saying necessarily that is what happened here, but generally in birding, the things that are fun for most of us are either to show and document something that you saw that was really interesting, unique, exciting, or to share that sighting with other people.
Right.
So most of the time, there's not a lot of motivation to actually, say that you saw something that you didn't. It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. And often the circumstances around those situations are odd when they do happen in other parts of birding, and you sort of get the stringy situations and you're like, everybody's like, there's just something that doesn't add up, because there is a kind of logic as to how it all works within birds, occurrences, timing, seasons. And to me, one of the things that really is like the part that gets me like
that could maybe one day keep me up at night if I had this thought. It's credibility and honesty is the backbone of a lot of what we do as sort of recreational birders.
Yes.
There's no, and even if you get to 10,000 birds, you don't get a trophy. You don't get a $5 million prize. You don't get.
This isn't the PGA.
Right. You get total, like a check box next to your name that says, "Wow, credible, awesome." Everybody gets how difficult this was, what you did, and you did it. So people have this sort of community-wide cheer for somebody who does something, and you might be totally against, doing this kind of thing. But everybody's kind of like, I think most people are like, wow, that took a lot of time and effort, and
for Peter, it took a lifetime, basically, right?
Lifetime.
He's been plotting this along for a long, long time, and everyone's been kind of watching the journey.
And don't you think, like, even if you had a solid list, and you were really building up to get to 10,000 birds, and you were on a really fast go, it would be odd, like, to suddenly, like, try to one up the person who's been trying to do this for like decades and decades and decades. I mean, I would see that some others might say, you know what, I want Peter to have this. I'll reach 10,000 birds later. Maybe I'll reach 10,500 at some point because I'm younger or whatever. But that almost makes more sense in our birding world, because the competition to be the first at that level doesn't get you anything. In fact, it's worse. Like, it makes you
the opposite.
It's the opposite, right? Yeah. If you were that person almost at 10,000, you would have said, "Hey, Peter, go get your 10,000, because I want to be there too. But I know that you've been doing this for a lot longer than I have." And it's like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just too pie in the sky kind of. Birding doesn't work that way, but
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it comes up a lot with non-birders, right? People are like, "Well, why don't they just lie, and say they saw the thing?" And I'm like, "But like, what do they win?" And that's sort of what you were driving at there. Is like, and the problem is that as birders. And I wrote an article for the ABA, the American Birding Association blog, years ago called "On Stringing," and it's a piece that might be worth reading.
I'm sure that you have a lot of experience with that yourself, so you would be able to take.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks. That's extremely flattering. I appreciate that. Yeah, and stringing, for those who may not know, it's the idea is that
stringing you along.
Yeah, somebody that strings along a bird, right? So it's like you're not outright lying usually, but you're usually like, "Hey, I saw in my yard I saw
northern goshawk.
I saw a hawk go by poorly. You know what? It kind of looked like a goshawk. You know what? It was a goshawk. You know what? I'm certain that was a goshawk. That was a goshawk, everybody. Yeah. I saw a goshawk in my yard." And that's kind of, it's just sort of like a snowball rolling down a hill. Yeah, and all of a sudden
replace my yard with India, and we're,
there you go. See? Yeah, but it's sort of like a balloon that got away from a child. Like, it's like it gets out of control quickly. But I think and that's the idea. I think is that with typically there's just not that much to gain. It's a shared experience, and the other thing is, and this is what I was trying to say, was that birders, we really thrive on and enjoy identification and recognizing patterns. And so if somebody that, shows up on the scene all of a sudden and is making claims that are completely new, the first reaction typically is to believe them and be fascinated.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a little bit of time, the next bit is to be like, well, wait, is this really happening? And then usually over time, that pattern repeats itself enough that people really start to question what is being reported by a particular observer. So at any rate, I don't want to harp too negatively on human behavior when it comes to, quote, stringing, but
Right.
this is a thing. It happens. And
It happens.
And it happens in pretty much every birding community. Everyone will know who this is, who these people are generally. And it makes the job of eBird reviewers difficult. Let's say that.
One general thing about stringing and one specific thing about Peter Kastner too. Stringing, I think the people who are the stringers, they seem to not last a long time in the community.
Yeah.
Like there's this new person comes in, weird sightings, and either they rectify the whole thing and they actually are like suddenly like something happens and everything's legit. There's sort of a point in time where it's like that person, and often that's age, like some young kid who's a little crazy,
or just experience,
and then experience, and then the other thing is so they don't last long, or they just get
they move on to something else.
They move on to something else. It's like I'm interested in that aspect of stringing too. Like you don't get lifetime stringers, very rare in the community.
And part of it is like it's sort of like your virginity. You only lose it once when it comes to your reputation. Like you have to
Speaking as a guy who has a soiled reputation, is that right, George?
Yeah, exactly, precisely.
Yes,
yeah, but basically, birders are good at identifying patterns, and if you are putting up a pattern that is
odd,
says I'm someone who's good at not documenting vagrants that I see and no one else sees, birders notice that.
Right. The other thing specifically about Peter is he's a trained diplomat.
That's true.
Right?
That's a very good point. Actually,
in the period of time in U.S. government where diplomacy was, just sort of the creme de la creme of diplomats, and he has taken and gone through this whole thing almost like with grace and politeness. Where I'm sure that the home video, if it ever comes out, it's probably him, like just mad and going, "What the hell's going on here?" You cannot be working for something for decades, have it essentially almost pulled out from under you, and then have all these things going on.
There was definitely a whiskey tango foxtrot moment there. There must have been,
yeah, and I just sort of feel like that's been an interesting thing to watch too publicly. That the reaction was so
measured,
magnanimous, open to the fact that maybe this had happened, and I was just like, that takes that wouldn't have been me. I'm pretty low key on most things, but I would have been like, what the hell, man? Like,
what the deuce is this nonsense? Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to talk about this topic. Here we are.
No, it's too juicy. It's too juicy to leave alone.
You can't leave it. Yeah. I know. There's probably more to talk about on this, and it made TikTok. I saw there was a TikTok of a non-birding person who was just said, "Hey, look, this crazy stuff's happening in the bird watching world," and was really well researched about all the timelines of what happened and laid it out for people.
Oh, we got to get that in the show notes. I want to see this. I
was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Then shifting just completely on something that just happened today that's, I think, was kind of cool about our community and, birders and whatever. It's like yesterday I got an email from Brian Ratcliffe, who's this guy that when I was a teenager, him and he was one of the drivers, and Hugh Curry, one of the other local birders in Toronto, took myself and my friend Carl, who we were both 14, to Texas, our first birding trip ever.
I
and he
remember hearing
said,
about this trip. Yeah.
yeah, he wrote me and said, "Hey, it's Brian, you might remember me from like when you were a kid, you know." It's like, how am I not going to remember you? Like it was a magical
An
trip, you know.
epiphany of a trip. Yeah.
Right, like open up my eyes to the whole deal. And he was going by Half Moon Bay, you know, with his wife. So we just had coffee for like 30 minutes, chatted about all sorts of things, and it was, to me, a fantastic kind of like, we have seen each other a couple of times after, you know, I'm no longer 14 years old, everybody,
Ah,
in those intervening
heavens.
years, but that birding and connection through birding events can be so strong
Powerful. Yeah.
that decades later this person can come out of the blue and say hi, and you're like, of course I'm going to go get together. It was too bad it wasn't longer, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like a cool thing we have in birding. We just,
That's true.
relationships that are sometimes really tight and other times kind of loose, but they come together every so often. People you might not see for years, you know.
Yeah. I can
And
think of
then,
people like that as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
where I had just like cool birding experiences with that, like we have not been in touch with since. But if I was to see them today, we would pick up the conversation as though
right,
almost no time had passed. It's
yeah,
like that's Greg Neese has that great piece also on the American Birding Association blog from back in the day. It says it was like he called it the secret handshake, you know, and it was like it's like you're a birder, okay, cool. We're we move forward. It's like there is that, you know, it's a real thing. But yeah, I think
yeah.
it's true. It transcends time.
It
There,
transcends time,
yeah.
and we, you know, you also have there's so many people that I know we've met a couple of times, or maybe we've been at ABA convention or something back in the day, and we had a good time. We had beers, talk birds, and then we've connected later on Facebook, and you're really good friends in an odd way, even though you've only spent like you add up the hours, you know, that you
Right.
actually had live with each other. It's not
Yeah.
huge,
Right.
but you know, it's birding. I don't know if it happens in other things, you know, like,
It's got to be unusual at the very least in this, in our pastime. It's got to be unusual. I do feel like,
yeah,
I think I've often talked about the, um, doing the Sea Watch in with Brian Sullivan, over in over on your side of on the Pacific there, and like hopping in the car with two guys I had never met before. They were like, "We're going to look for California condors," and Brian was like, "I got to go home to work," and I was like, "Yeah, but I want to look for condors." And we only had one vehicle between us, and so I hopped in the car with these guys, spent all day birding with them. I'd never met them before, like for all I know, they could have been axe murderers, but
right,
they weren't. I knew they weren't
yeah,
axe murderers,
yeah,
and we like, and we connect every now and then via social media, but just because of that one day,
yeah,
and that was what, 8 years ago, more.
right.
And I feel like there's a million of those stories as birders that we have.
And to take it back to my teenager experience, you know, going to Texas, can you imagine today, in today's world, parents allowing 14-year-old kids to go with basically random strangers to go 2-week birding trip, crossing an international boundary? And,
Oh my God.
you know, I mean, and Brian was telling me that, he said, "Do you remember that we got to the border and the border people phoned your parents just to make sure everything was legit?" Because they were like, "What do you guys, you know, none of your passports have the same last name. What's going on here?" You know, like, so
This
it's
reminds me
funny.
of my first, like, I only ever really dabbled in what one might call science. I was always more of a birder tour leader, kind of tried to fill the niche between science and the layperson. But I did an expedition once to the Gulf Coast from Philly. We drove. This is back in the 90s, and there, I was working for some people at the time, and that they put us in their own personal car that had 5 shotguns and 3 tanks of liquid nitrogen. And we were 18 years old, and they basically had a note that said, if you get into trouble, show this to somebody. And it was like, please extend these gentlemen any courtesy that you may. and thinking about it today, it seems crazy, but at the time, we were working, and that was what we were doing, and it just seems, absurdly crazy now. But
crazy.
It's where we
Speaking, last, we can do this 20 minutes. We'll pick the juicy ones, but the AOS, the North American Classification Committee, recently put out, see how it works is like once a year, the Classification Committee votes on and publishes a new set of birds lists that what they are going to split and what they're going to lump, right? And they first publish the proposals, and the proposals have all of this detail to show the public exactly what they're voting on. So you get to see what the committee is voting on, the topics, and also the detailed analysis. But what you don't get to see is the votes themselves, right? So the voting is done in private. So we know what passes and what fails in the end. But we're at this moment where we have 2 sets of proposals that are out and are going to be voted on. And it's the great time to sort of look at them and go, what do you think? How's this one going to go? And that's a surprise kind of thing. So we have 2 sets of proposals. And I found some things that to me were surprising. Like I was taken kind of left field by the fact that the idea that we're going to take brown booby and separate the Brewster's group, the white headed brown boobies from kind of Mexico.
Yeah, I like that. I like this.
I like it, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't see this coming. I had no idea this was even on the. I mean,
I saw that one. I was like, that's overdue.
Right?
Yeah,
and there's all sorts of good data associated with it, not just the way they look, but some genetic work and other stuff.
Yeah, there's some here I don't like for only personal opinionated reasons, but that one I was like, yes, do that.
Yeah, and also. Everybody likes the splits and lumps. Well, the splits more than the lumps for the birders, but a lot of these things too are rearranging birds. What order is this going to happen in, or the herons, who's related to
the herons was one I spent some time looking at as well. Yeah,
and I think I got to say that if you're keen on understanding bird, the evolution of birds, these are some of the most interesting, more so than the splits and lumps, but they don't get the interest from the bird people because you don't get another check on your list, but it sometimes goes through and sorts out who's related to what. Like, what was did you kind of go through the herons one and have any thoughts that kind of made you that were surprising to you, or like I know, for example, some things are. The new information basically is that there was a big DNA bit of work done in 2023. So they sampled a lot of stuff, and then they made this tree. And there are some things that I found surprising, like the boat-billed heron, which I always kind of feel is kind of night heronish thing.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing to do with night herons. Like it's on its own.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that, and I thought that was fascinating because I had the same exact take. Like in my mind, that's like a, probably outside the night herons, but close relative.
Right.
But not the case. Apparently. No. Yeah.
And same thing with Agami heron. Agami heron's like a weird, beautiful heron, but there's some element of it that you're like, that's probably related kind of to a tricolor heron. Nothing to do with a tricolor heron. Totally on its own. Like
that part I was less surprised by.
less
To me,
surprised.
yeah, I thought I was like, that makes sense to me. It's its own thing. Made more sense to me.
And
But again, I'm going on gut. This is no science behind it. Purely like visceral reaction on
I
my
know,
part.
but
Yeah.
we
But that's
react
part of the fun.
viscerally,
I feel like it's
right?
like being a sports fan. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, and there's stuff that you just you look through the main set of herons and egrets, and there are some that are white and some that are not white. And being white, it means nothing almost, and you could sort of say, oh well, that makes sense because some of these species have a dark morph and a white morph, so it's obvious that this white thing kind of comes and goes. But there was an odd one that I think you were kind of troubled by, and that was cattle egret, which
Yeah.
cattle egret's always been in its own genus, and this suggests it's really just part of the Ardea group.
And I think it was even in Ardiola at one point, I believe, right? So it's never been an art in my living mind. It's never been an Ardea, which is like for those who don't know, the big herons, great blue heron, now great egret, which used to be Chasmarodeus, but or gray heron. Like it's never been in
or
that
medium egret now it's called.
Yes,
medium egret. Yeah. Right, purple heron. That
yes.
So it's in that group, and it's not related to the true egrets like tricolored, little blue heron, snowy egret, little egret, which are sort of the what I kind of think of as a classically true egrets. Not at all. Completely different deal.
You're probably confusing people a little bit because the term you're using tricolored heron in the egrets, and of course, egret and heron to me are sort of like pigeon and dove or frog and toad. They really don't have any taxonomic meaning, which leads me to one point within this herons bit that bothered me a little bit, which was the removal of the hyphen is being suggested from night heron. They want to remove and make night heron 2 words rather than one hyphenated word, and I just don't see the value in that. But
so this is one of these things where you've heard me harp about the idea that we have English names being worked on by scientists, and some scientists will have these wonderful, sometimes coded information within some structure that only they know about, and everybody else is not in on it, even though it's been written out there and it's been, it's in the public eye. It just doesn't infiltrate into the regular person's, thought process. But night heron, if you have a hyphen between night heron, it means that's a natural group, like all the birds that have that name are supposed to be in the same clade. They're supposed to be all more closely related to each other than they are to anything that would be a night without hyphen heron. Right. So when you find things that are not quite each other's relatives, and people do a phylogeny, and suddenly you're like, oh, these things, even though they look alike, they're not really quite each other's relatives. We need to get rid of that hyphen, obviously.
Yeah. Well, then maybe they should also separate the words night and hawk, because I mean, it's not like the English names have any real taxonomic meaning, right? Like they're handles, they're useful handles. So the idea that like they're supposed to convey anything useful from a taxonomic standpoint, I find a little frustrating.
And exactly, and the fact that there's taxonomic meaning that's almost like, unless you have the golden rule and somebody's taught it to you, you have no idea that it's there, and then that the name will have to change if there's a taxonomic change that's not a split or a lump, means like we've over-engineered this, like totally over-engineered. Like it doesn't make sense. Like you just call it night heron. No. Just it's a heron of the night, and it doesn't mean that they're all closely related to each other.
A little dicey, but
I know heron of the night. It's like it's just I don't know.
Yeah, the herons one though. There's a couple things that irritated me. One was that, and some other things that I just found interesting. The other is that and again, no science behind this, just all personal preference. I really want great white heron to be split. I want what Macaulay, right?
I think there's
Or no,
two.
Occidentalis.
Right.
I want that
In the
to
old
be,
world, right?
sorry? No, the Key West,
Oh,
the
oh, oh,
Caribbean.
sorry. I'm thinking
Yeah.
of great white egret,
Egret,
the
yeah.
great egret. Yeah.
But there was no mention of that whatsoever. So I don't know if they didn't look at it or if just everyone's decided it really is just a morph. But I think it's very odd because the morph is pretty segregated to one region.
Yeah, that's a separate publication, and it was declined. Like it didn't happen like a few years ago.
I know. I just still want it to happen.
I know.
Cool.
I think it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't seem to. Gotcha. There's a bunch of things here. A lot of seabird stuff.
A lot of seabird stuff.
A lot of seabird stuff. Jamaican petrel, which is considered extinct or potentially extinct from Jamaica. That I had no idea that it was.
No one's documented since the 1800s. So,
right. So
except maybe one guy that's challenging Peter Kastner. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you never know. So Jamaican petrel, I had no idea that they're still considering it a subspecies of black-cap petrel, which to me, it's like, wow, that makes no sense. It doesn't look like one, different size, and actually aren't most of them dark? All dark.
I think all Jamaican petrel specimens, I think, are like very, very dark birds. Entirely dark birds.
Not white-bellied. Okay, I wondered if they were.
I don't know how many specimens there are, but that's my recollection.
But they're also different size too, if I remember right.
Smaller than black-cap petrels is my recollection.
There are some things that some people that have traveled around, here and there, they're like, oh yeah, that should have been a long time ago. The Ridgway's rough-winged swallow from the Petén region, in Mexico, Belize, and so forth, to be separated from northern rough-winged swallow, totally different. I mean, as far as swallows goes, it's a pretty different deal, I think, and different vocalizations and so forth. But so that's going to be interesting if that happens.
The sharp-shinned hawks, I thought was cool. The splitting that Puerto Rican and sharp-shinned hawk, I think would be very good, very good. Well,
all the
Caribbean ones,
and I think this is step one into a multi deal, right? Because eventually the
plain-breasted, white-breasted,
in
all
South
the
America,
South American ones, all of that would make sense, I think, to most people.
And now there's really solid DNA evidence to show that, like these things are quite different. They've been separated for a long time, to say, to put it another way. Total surprise out of the blue, because for me, I've always thought maybe I should try to put the info together on this one day again, because it's gone through the committee before, but it's herring gull. To split herring gull into 3 species in this case: herring, European, or North American gull, whatever you call it, Smithsonianus, herring gull, the true herring gull in Europe, and then Vega gull in Asia.
I think I know the perfect name for the North American one.
Just seagull?
Seagull. S-E-A. Seagull.
Seagull. Yeah.
Boom.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I would not be against that.
Alvaro, I am expecting you to write I will go to bat with you on this to write the proposal, the English name proposal for this one.
Yeah.
It would be so awesome. This is another former article of mine that I wrote. Right. Give the people what they want. Seagull.
Yeah.
It's
Seagull.
High time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting the sense if I wrote something up for the committee, they might just put it right in the round file immediately when they see my name. But I don't know.
You're increasingly popular there from what I gather.
God.
Yes.
Yeah. Just shut up. I should just never talk about this stuff again. One that is absolutely interesting to me, and I did this solo podcast about super genes, and maybe if it ever airs, and you kind of don't get bored through it, but the red poles are a whole super gene deal going on. So
I am looking forward to listening to that podcast.
Yeah,
because I've heard you talk about it a little bit before. I thought it was fascinating.
But what has been the crux of the problem with red poles is that they actually exist as entities, right? So people go like, well, this thing is common red pole, and this thing's hoary red pole. They look different. Their distribution's different, blah, blah, blah. Yet you start looking at their songs, their call notes, and eventually some of the DNA, and it's like, they're kind of not different at all. So how do we get...
big mix?
Yeah. How do we get a big mix? And then yet these things exist.
Distinct phenotypes that are completely, distinct.
Yeah.
In appearance,
and
at least.
It's this super gene deal where essentially you have a series of a bit of the genome that gets passed on as a unit. I won't get too much into it because it's going to be in the other podcast. And then you can have the distribution of sort of which genotype you have based if you're in the south versus the north, so much so that you can have differences in what you look like, what your size is, what your build size is, depending on what form of the supergene you have, yet you are in a mixed population sharing all of the rest of the genes, and therefore there's no genetic break anywhere. And you're like, oh, that's like adds a whole different deal into how to understand morphology and genetics, which is like blown me away, tell you the truth. So I think the red poles now have been solved and they will be lumped.
Are there other examples of this super gene within birds that you can?
Yeah, ruffs. There's some other ones coming. They're brand new, so people are sort of starting to look at them, and there are other things in other plants and other deals where you can get the super gene phenomenon happening. And
I got to say, ruff, I think, is one of the more fascinating species of birds in the world.
Yeah.
Like there is so much texture there.
Yeah. And I think this one is going to hurt in some ways because in the far north in winter, you have very few species to look at, and now you'll have one less. It's like if you're up in, northern Manitoba and you're like, oh yeah, here we go. Common red pole, hoary red pole coming our way. Now it's just going to be a red pole.
Well, or even worse for those of us living in the mid-Atlantic or even just sort of the middle latitudes of North America. It's like you sort through that. You get a big flight year of red poles and you're trying to sort through. You find a hoary red pole, it's going to be meaningless at this point.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a shift, but I do think this one's going to go through almost like without a doubt.
You mentioned the seabirds. That I have to say, as somebody who spends a lot of time seabirding off the Atlantic coast of the United States, I looked at the potential separation of Boyd's shearwater with interest, as well as the split of Corey's shearwater into a couple different species. Two that we've been looking at for some time, but still, that is going to make field separation difficult. It will pose challenges for those of us birding offshore.
Right. I know it's yet I think some of the Europeans have figured they're pretty identifiable, the Coreys, and but I don't know how reliable.
I think they are a good percentage of the time, especially if you get photographs. But
right.
Sans photographs could be challenging.
Yeah. And then Boyd's, I guess, you could pretend you're like a 1940s guy, going, just looking at Boyd's, and always, I don't know, Boyd's. It makes me laugh. There are some more esoteric things out there, a revision of the plovers, as some people call them.
There you
separation of squirrel cuckoo. That's sort of south of us, and the move of evening grosbeak and hooded grosbeak out of the genus that the hawfinch is in into their own genus separate from hawfinch. So some of those things are like, oh, one that I thought was a little weird, the split of red-shouldered hawk into sort of the eastern and Florida one versus the California
Western one. Yeah.
Yeah, which
distinct in plumage. Although I don't know where the Florida ones and the eastern ones, where those would segregate exactly. But
there's a big gap. There's sort of a red shoulder free zone between the two. So
that's right.
The two groups.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's.
They each of them look very different from one another, and they are segregated by range. So, but yeah, that's still surprising to me nonetheless.
Yeah, and it'll only be two, right? The Florida and the eastern will be the same thing, same species, and then the western one.
All right, I didn't look at that one. I saw that it existed, but I didn't look at it in any.
One thing too is like when you look at these proposals, some of them they're this really complex, well-written proposals showing you all the stuff that's going on, and then at the end they say we propose not to split. So just because there's a proposal here doesn't mean that the writer of the proposal says, this is a good split. One that's happening like that is green-winged teal, common teal, where they suggest there should be no split. That there are real differences. There's subspecies.
It's raised, but the idea is to keep them still as one.
And this is in the spirit of like, we've actually looked at this, we've dealt with this, and here's our, the committee decides, that we're going to keep them as all one species, for example. Sometimes the committee could go against that and they go, oh, this is fine. Let's, they can go against
right. They got to make a decision either way. Yeah.
Right. So, and the red-shouldered hawk, I'm actually.
I'll be surprised if they split those, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, and to me, they show some difference in vocalizations as to like the elegance, the Western one, maybe calling more. The calls come in more quickly in the series, sort of not so drawn out. But I'm like, that's pretty minor level stuff, and so.
And the plumage differences could be pretty much chalked up to environmental stuff. Yeah.
Right. Maybe I have to read this in more detail. And there's like some underlying true, like, wow, this is worth thinking about. But I'm never impressed when I go to the East and I sort of reacquaint myself with Eastern red-shouldered hawks, that they're that different from the Western ones, other than, they're not as colorful as the California ones. But in the plovers, though, maybe that'll be the last one we kind of chat about. One of the neat things is that all the collared plovers that we have here are not each other's closest relatives, which I thought was cool. So the ringed semi-palmated group, that will include like piping, for example, is going to be the group that retains the name Charadrius or Charadrius, as some people. Yet,
so what are some of the other examples?
Okay. Snowy is in a different genus. Snowy, collared plover, Wilson's, Kentish, different part of the tree. So the fact that they all have this little collar deal, not that important. And it's sort of I thought, pretty interesting. And also some things that were treated as part of that greater Charadrius for a moment are now going to be given their own genera, like rufous-chested dotterel down south, which is a really funky-looking, cool shorebird.
Beautiful bird.
It gets its own genus, for example.
What about tawny-throated dotterel's already its own genus?
Yeah. That one's got its, but it was lumped for a few years with Charadrius, the whatchamacallit, rufous-chested dotterel.
What
And
about
so
mountain plover? Where does that fall in this group? Because that is a dotterel, right? I mean, it looks like a dotterel.
I know that's a good question. What's
Like plain, we've
Charadrius?
talked about how like that's, it's a terrible name for that bird, but like plains dotterel or,
Yeah,
yeah, at any rate, it'd be interesting to know that one.
I think it's closer to the group that includes Wilson's plover and all that. Sort of quickly looking here. So yeah, it's a total revamp, and the other thing too is that the lapwings, which we have always thought of as like a totally different group, which they are from the rest of the plovers,
the vanillas
are as different as other chunks within the group that we've never thought of as that different. So Charadrius is in a totally different clade, as separate from the snowy plover group as they are from lapwings, if that makes sense. So snowy plover is more closely related to a lapwing than it is to a killdeer, which like no, or even make it more extreme.
Killdeer is our lapwing, right? Like in functionality, not
in functionality. Yeah. And so let's put it this way: snowy plover is more closely related to a lapwing than it is a piping plover.
I was going to say, or semi-palmated plover.
Yeah. So just to like give it, like, whoa, it's a little odd. And the sister,
cool. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? Like this reorganization sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
And the outlying group, the first line of plovers that's separate from everybody else, pluvialis, like the golden black-bellied plover, that is on its own little branch. You're like, boy, I didn't see that coming. I mean, like you, I would have thought that maybe they were allied a bit with
the dotterels, or
like mountain plover, dotterels or something like that, but they're not. So, and right, the rearranging and changing of the genera and so on, it's not fun stuff in the same way as the splits and lumps, but it really kind of like drills into how these things separated out and evolved, and also what continents are in versus where they're not. Fascinating stuff. Like I can look at some of those trees forever and go, oh, look at that. I can't believe that's there and that's there. Obviously sometimes you need to take them with a little bit of a grain of salt if there's some uncertainty on some of the branches, but other times it's sort of like, whoa, interesting stuff.
Yeah, and if folks want to see this, we'll try to include this in the show notes, but you go to the AOS site. If you want to just Google AOS and then Google 2024 proposals, you ought to find it. I got to say, if we end up with getting Vega gull as a species and seagull somehow comes out of this, that'll be an incredible victory, Alvaro.
Right.
Seagull, give it. Let's do seagull. It. Let's make this happen.
And I mean, just to end this whole topic, one of the things that I do fear is that because it's Smithsonianus is named for the Smithsonian Institution, because the specimen that it was used to name this species was in the Smithsonian, so they sort of gave it like that name. Smithsonian gull would just be, I don't like it at all, because it does not do anything for me. And kudos to the Smithsonian Institution, for being kind of like the place that a lot of research has been done in the for years. But I would rather have the bird have some name that is a little bit more fun.
Yeah, maybe a little shorter and 3 letters.
Yeah. Seagull's about the only thing. Because what are you going to call it? It was like, let's call it silver gull. Oh, that's taken. Yeah. Let's call it gray gull. Oh, that's taken. Well, how about white-bellied gull? Well, they're almost all white-bellied. Okay. How about
I just think it'd be so
yellow-eyed
great.
gull?
I mean,
Yeah.
as I've long said, like if you named herring gull the seagull, when people said, "Hey, there's a seagull in the U.S., Canada," they would be correct a lot more of the time. And I think
Right.
that, that would just be a tremendous victory for all of us.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But everybody, maybe give us your votes on what you think will pass, what will not pass, your comments. If you read these and you're into this, like figuring out what's going to happen is almost like trying to figure out, some big court, some.
What it really is everybody gets to be Nostradamus for a day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's take your guess at what could pass, what may not pass. What do you think? But fascinating stuff. And I guess we might get 2 more sets of, depending on how many proposals are being written, that could happen before the kind of middle of the summer, before the final voting happens. So we'll see. I don't know if this is it or if there's going to be more. So there you go.
Right
Done.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, this is a juicy one. We could go on, but yeah, at some point we all have to go.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for the feedback. And Alvaro, is there anything you want the good people to know before we scoot here?
As I said earlier in the other podcasts, it may come in before this one or not, I don't know. Cuba, please check it out. Amazing tour to one of the coolest places on earth, not only for birds, but just people, music, scenery, vibe, and just the history of the place and our relationship with Cuba is of interest to a lot of people, I think. And go see that as well as cool birds in a pretty safe country. Go do it, Cuba. Check it out, Alvaro's Adventures.
Nice. Yep, check out the Trogon there, boy. That's a beauty as well.
Yeah.
And, yeah, great. And I would encourage people to check out the hillstarnature.com site. We've got a bunch of new stuff we're rolling out. We have a Spain trip that Josh Koval is leading. I have a Brazil Pantanal trip that we'll be announcing shortly. And we have a whole bunch of new India stuff we're doing. Just back from India. I'll have a pod, I think, on some of the areas I looked at. And, encourage people to check that out.
Right.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again soon. Cheers, Alvaro.
Bye-bye. See you later.